My BF, 22M, just opened up to me, and I, 23F, don't know how to forgive him. Trigger warning not safe for work. Mention of masturbation. Hello everyone. I first want to apologize for any mistakes. English is not my first language and I am still learning. I, a 22-year-old female, have been in a relationship with my boyfriend, a 22-year-old male, for nearly 3 years. For some background, he became jealous and possessive after a few months, almost a year, primarily due to some actions I took that I acknowledge were somewhat disrespectful to him. I never cheated or sent any inappropriate messages, far from that. Just some awkward behavior I exhibited at the start of our relationship, as this is my first serious one. At one point last year, I expressed to him that I was weary of his jealousy because he seemed anxious and jealous about any interaction I had with male colleagues. I worked as a waitress and later a manager, which required frequent interactions with male coworkers he was not fond of. He has since worked on himself and is no longer jealous or possessive, though he still has occasional feelings. They are more in line with a healthy relationship. Now, regarding the current issue. A few days ago, I was at his house and we were watching the show Inside Man, which discusses pedophilia. We finished watching on Thursday night, and on Friday night, he began asking if everything was okay because he noticed I was acting strangely. I assured him that all was well. We went to bed, and that is when he broke down. He revealed that something traumatic occurred to him when he was between 5 and 7 years old. I don't wish to share the details, but noted that he was involved in a sexual situation that severely traumatized him. There were no adults or older individuals involved. He has had a very challenging relationship with his own sexuality. He told me he has been using masturbation every night to help him sleep and watches pornography daily. I told him I could forgive him, provided he works through his issues and sees a therapist, and that he remains honest with me. Everything felt fine. We cried and had an open conversation. The following day, he visited me, and everything seemed all right. While we were smoking, we discussed his day and how it went. He mentioned that his best friend, they worked together, noticed something was off with him and that he appeared sad. He said something that upset me again, though it is not essential to the main point. After that, I asked him to tell me everything he had been concealing from me. That is when he revealed the most heartbreaking news. He admitted he used to masturbate to pictures of 2 of our former coworkers. He does not have social media, but found one of the girls' Instagram accounts through me, and the other time was after she posted a bikini picture on her story. Please understand I hold no ill feelings toward these girls. If anything, I feel incredibly sorry for them. He reassured me he hasn't done this in nearly a year and feels terribly ashamed. He repeatedly asked me for a second chance. I care for him deeply. I do not wish for him to endure this alone, and I want to regain my trust in him. He is aware of how bad he feels, and he has promised to work on himself and be completely honest. However, I struggle with the idea of trusting him again because throughout our relationship, he often made me feel guilty for my actions and claimed he never did anything to warrant my doubt, insisting he was always truthful. But that was all untrue. I cannot shake the feeling that our entire relationship has been founded on a deception. He knows I have insecurities about my body, and I frequently mentioned that those 2 coworkers were exceptionally attractive and had beautiful physiques. I had never compared my body to theirs before this, but now I cannot help but do so. I am at a loss for how to proceed. He has promised he would change if I allowed him a second chance. I am frightened. We had already discussed plans to get married, and he intended to convert to my religion. I did not pressure him into this, by the way. I am also reflecting on other aspects of our relationship. He aspires to create music, but he is not making progress toward this goal. He has a well-paying job as a waiter in a high-end restaurant, yet he has no backup plan if the music venture fails. I have expressed countless times that I do not want him working in the service industry as we age because, in our country, you must work night shifts to earn a decent living in that field. This uncertainty gives me anxiety. I understand that life does not always go according to plan. I am currently studying to enter medical school, and who knows if I will even be accepted. However, I always have contingency plans in place. I still have not introduced him to my family. I am an Arab Muslim. If you know, you know. And I am somewhat apprehensive about introducing him to my mother, as he lacks a higher education and began working as a waiter right after graduating. My mother is highly academic-focused, and I have been too, but I initially ignored this because I love him so much. However, I did express my feelings to him a few months ago, and he reiterated that he has no other plans, it's either music or nothing. In any case, this has already become excessively long, and I still have many things to discuss. I genuinely need some advice. I feel lost and uncertain about what to do. I want to forgive him, but I really do not know how to begin, nor am I even sure if I can. I previously told him that masturbating to acquaintances feels, to me, akin to cheating. My questions are: how can I forgive him? How can I trust him again? Is that even feasible? Is this behavior justifiable due to his trauma? I understand that hypersexuality can result from such trauma, but I am uncertain about him masturbating to people we both know. I apologize if this was difficult to read, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my concerns. Story 2. My 20F boyfriend, 21M, is the best boyfriend I have ever had, but I still want to break up. How can I deal with these feelings? I apologize if this is unclear, as English is my second language. Trigger warning: mentions of sexual assault, depression. We connected on a dating application and hit it off immediately. During the initial conversation phase, I invited him to my home to watch Netflix, and he didn't even attempt to kiss me, which made me feel safe. After a month of chatting and going on dates about 3 to 4 days each week, I took the initiative to engage in sexual intimacy, and we began dating shortly after, which was also my suggestion. That evening, we discussed our previous relationships in detail, and I shared my experience with sexual assault. Everything felt fine in the beginning. He was very considerate, communicated well, brought me flowers, took me out on dates, and provided gifts. Initially, I wasn't very affectionate due to my trauma, but I believed he truly understood me. Over time, I improved at showing my affection. Our relationship progressed rapidly. Within 2 to 3 weeks of becoming exclusive, all of his family members were aware of me. I met his friends and cousins, which intimidated me. He urged me to inform my parents and to arrange a meeting, which I declined. We had a few disagreements that led to a decline in my feelings for him over the past 3 months. The first concerned his family, as I previously mentioned. He also accused me of oversharing after I told him that a friend of 5 years made a joke about my sexual assault. I ended the friendship immediately after the joke and confronted him. Additionally, he remarked that I should be quiet because I talked too much when I introduced him to my best friend. I felt very embarrassed when he said that, especially since it was their first time meeting. He made a similar comment during a phone call, claiming he would hang up because I spoke too much and overwhelmed him. It's worth noting that we hadn't spoken for several days due to our busy schedules, and I was simply eager to discuss ordinary topics with him. After he ended the call, he sent a text with the same sentiment. Moreover, his tone was quite harsh in our native language, although it does not translate well into English. We also tracked our locations, and he suspected I was unfaithful when I was at the hospital because the hospital was located on the ground floor of a building and appeared as a regular apartment building on the map. If one zooms in on the app, it is clear that it is a hospital. I never disturb him when he is out drinking with friends until the morning, yet he accuses me of not caring about him because of this, but I simply trust him. Both of us are university students on winter break. Before returning to my parents' home, I confided in him that these arguments had led me to lose most of my feelings for him, and I considered breaking up before our relationship turned sour. We talked until 4 a.m., and I cried a lot because he truly is the best partner I have ever had. I attempted to end the relationship 4 times that night, but he consistently rejected the idea and expressed confidence that we could resolve our issues. He asked me to reconsider at my parents' house. I can see how much he cares for me and the effort he invests in our relationship, but I simply cannot continue. Much of my emotional turmoil is tied to my past relationships and my experience with sexual assault. My mental health has been deteriorating over the past year, and I find myself deeply entrenched in depression at this point. I am on medication and attend therapy, but nothing seems to help at this stage. He is aware of every detail regarding my mental state and history. Last week, I revealed how severe things had become, and all I could think about was ending my life because of my sexual assault experience. He called me foolish and claimed that he had never even contemplated harming himself during his own struggles with depression. He stated, "If you really wanted to improve, you would." At that moment, I completely lost it. I cannot feel anything for him anymore. I attempted to break up once more, but he insisted that he would not end our relationship. He told me that he planned to buy me gifts again, but I declined because he knows how uncomfortable it makes me when he spends money on me, yet he continues to do so repeatedly. I feel confined. I do not want to be labeled a gold digger, even though he claims he does it out of love, and I buy him gifts of similar value so we should be equal, but I do not feel equal in this relationship. He is a good person and typically a wonderful partner. We are all human, and we both have our imperfections. Normally, I would be able to overlook his minor flaws, but because of my mental condition, I simply cannot. Despite my love for him, I do not wish to be in a relationship right now. Every time I attempt to end things, he dismisses my feelings. I am unsure how to navigate this situation. I have expressed my feelings and thoughts to him numerous times in detail. Although we have been together for 3 months, we have not been intimate for the past 2 months because I no longer want to, and he is okay with this. He even took me to the emergency room when I was extremely ill. He is an overall good boyfriend, but we lack common interests or topics to discuss. Our general opinions, family backgrounds, and upbringing are also incompatible. He asserts that he is in love with me and that he is satisfied with the state of our relationship. Clearly, I cannot share everything here. This is merely a summary. I am uncertain about what to do. Even though he is fine with me having lesser feelings for him compared to his feelings for me, I do not want a relationship devoid of mutual feelings and compatible personalities. I do not know if I will ever feel for him as I once did. I have been striving so hard, yet I cannot seem to manage it. Any advice would be appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Story 3. My 29M girlfriend, 30F, doesn't believe in monogamy but still wants to be together. Warning: long approximately 3 years ago, I, 29M, met an incredibly stunning brunette 30F at my workplace. We had both recently assumed new positions and connected extremely well. We began spending time together outside of work, only for me to discover that she was in a relationship. As I got to know her better, she invited me to her parents' summer residence to spend a few days together. It became apparent that we were both intensely attracted to one another, and it was during this trip that she informed me she had an open relationship with her long-term partner. She claimed they had been together for a significant time, but faced issues in their relationship, leading her to reject monogamy, which prompted them to agree to an open arrangement. One thing led to another, and weeks of accumulated sexual tension resulted in a remarkable few days filled with youthful escapades. Upon returning from the trip, I was quite disheartened because she informed me it had to end. One condition of her agreement with her partner was that she could not engage in relationships with her colleagues. A few weeks went by, and she phoned to express her desire to continue what we had started. I felt a bit uneasy, but having never been in such a situation, I resolved to give it 6 months and reassess if I still felt uncertain. 18 months later, we were still together, and we had fallen deeply in love with one another. At this point, I came to realize just how unhappy I truly was. I was always in the secondary position and frequently deprioritized, something she often reminded me of. I recognized that it was my fault for entering this situation, but I knew it had to end. An intensely emotional breakup followed. I wanted to maintain some distance as I understood we struggled to stay apart. However, shortly after, she told me she had ended things with her long-term partner and wanted us to be together. I explained that the only way I could proceed was if we entered into a monogamous relationship. I acknowledged this may sound hypocritical, but I had first-hand knowledge of the unhappiness an open relationship could bring to everyone involved. She agreed that if that was necessary for us to be together, she would comply. That is when the real issues began. Not long after, she moved into her ex's spare bedroom, stating she would stay there for as long as it took to purchase a property of her own. This process lasted nearly a year, during which time our relationship deteriorated significantly, and my mental health suffered greatly. She spent the majority of her time with her ex, explaining that she could not flaunt our relationship in his presence. They went on trips together, she took him to family events, and she would screen my calls whenever he was nearby. I basically had to become invisible. I became increasingly frustrated, resulting in me saying things to her that I regretted, essentially calling her out. After about a year, our relationship soured, and she ended things with me, ironically the same week she moved into her new home. As previously mentioned, we found it challenging to remain apart. In the months that followed, we frequently messaged each other and hooked up a few times. I began making plans to relocate back to my hometown to start fresh and distance myself from the situation. I soon discovered she was seeing other individuals, and when she learned of my plans to move away, it culminated in a very emotional evening spent discussing things. Just before Christmas, we decided to give our relationship another chance. I would plan to move in with her, and we could establish a normal relationship. This brings us to near the present day. The first few weeks of this new arrangement were wonderful. We both seemed happy, discussing our future and even talking about children, a topic we had both previously opposed. Last week, everything began to unravel. She confessed to having a crush on one of our coworkers. They had spent time together, but nothing had occurred. While I may appear naive, she has always been truthful with me regarding these issues. She is a poor liar. It felt like a severe blow, but she assured me she loved me more than anything and still wished to be together, despite her fundamental disbelief in monogamy. She expressed sadness and a sense of being trapped, describing it as seeing a new toy she could not play with. She said she would continue being monogamous if that was what it took for us to be together. Fast forward a few more days, and she initiates a major argument regarding how I treated her while she was still living with her ex. She mentioned she was still upset with me about things I said over a year ago, and that it would take considerable time for her anger to diminish. She stated that I had mistreated her during her grief over her former partner. Once more, she emphasized that she loved me deeply and wanted to make things work. At this stage, I am a broken individual. Our relationship has been an utter disaster thus far. I care for her immensely and desperately want to make it work, but I feel as though our relationship is just a ticking time bomb. I fear that one day she may turn around and declare that our relationship isn't sufficient for monogamy, perhaps after we have made significant commitments. We often fantasize about our future together, yet it constantly feels as though we are on shaky ground. I fluctuate between thinking I am insane for remaining in this relationship and believing I am overreacting. I realize many may wonder why either of us has tolerated the other for such an extended period. I have not been forthright with friends and family about the circumstances for fear of judgment, but it is time to seek some opinions. Is this relationship sustainable? TLDR, I have navigated a tumultuous relationship with my girlfriend. She does not believe in monogamy, but remains willing to pursue a monogamous relationship if it means we can be together. Story 4. My 21M girlfriend, 19F, acts somewhat childish sometimes, and it gets on my nerves when I'm not in the mood. How can we come to an agreement that lets us both be happy? I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend for almost 10 months now. We both attend the same college in the United States, and we live together in her apartment. I am renting my own place, but we enjoy sleeping together, so I have essentially moved in. She was raised in Southeast Asia, while I grew up in the United States, but we are both of Chinese descent. Consequently, there is occasionally a cultural difference between us, mainly concerning societal norms in the United States. For instance, she does not believe in physical contact with the opposite gender unless you are romantically involved, even hugging a friend in any situation. You would not be able to determine she is not from the United States in a brief conversation, but there are signs once you get to know her better. I am her first boyfriend and crush, according to her, while I have had several girlfriends before her. When we initially started dating, I appreciated her maturity. She was definitely mature for her age, and we managed to have vulnerable, sensitive discussions without judgment or bias. Specifically, I shared my entire dating history with her before we began seriously dating, and she felt comfortable enough to disclose some of her most vulnerable moments, things she had never shared with anyone else previously. I viewed her as someone who had a strong grip on her emotions and could rationally address issues. This is a significant part of why I considered her a great potential girlfriend. I moved in with her just as the autumn semester began, and that is when we became truly comfortable with each other. At this point, she started behaving a bit more playfully and immaturely, such as teasing, adopting a childish voice calling me Pookie, and showing more youthful mannerisms overall. I do not mind most of it when I am in a good mood, but it really irritates me when I am feeling down, tired, or frustrated about something else. Essentially, engaging with her when she is acting childishly drains my social energy, and I need time alone or with my other friends to regain my sense of self. Meanwhile, she would prefer to spend all her time with me if possible, and she has never requested time alone. I believe I need time alone or with other friends because my sense of humor, personality, and mindset are certainly more American than hers, and I feel more like myself around those who can relate. I am unsure why she does not feel the same way, as she does not seem to have a strong desire to spend time with people more similar to her. She is friends with several other students from her country at our college. There are also a few minor things that mildly bother me even when I am in a good mood. For instance, whenever she is physically hurt, for example, if she stubs her toe, she speaks in a toddler voice and says, "It pain," accompanied by a childlike expression. She sometimes studies with children's animated shows playing in the background, such as SpongeBob, CoComelon, some animated Mr. Bean series, and so on. I am not sure if I should be bothered by this since I am a bit of a Pokémon enthusiast, but my reasoning is that the Pokémon content I engage with is not specifically aimed at young children. Pokémon showdown gameplay, strategies, Pokémon statistics, and other nerdy content, while she is watching material specifically designed for young kids. I think one of our underlying issues is that she desires the freedom to act silly or playful while her boyfriend is mature, responsible, and looks after her, whereas I seek a relationship where we are both equals, mature, and true partners. I appreciate affection and a touch of corniness, but definitely not when she behaves like a child, and I feel like her older brother or parent. My main concern is that her childish behaviors are almost constant, which is quite different from the personality of the girl I fell for when we began dating. I can tolerate it, and I admit, I sometimes enable it for her happiness when I am in a good mood, but it genuinely disheartens me and upsets me when I am not feeling well. I have addressed this issue with her on multiple occasions already, and her explanation for her behavior is that she is the oldest of 3 siblings and never had the chance to act like a child growing up due to the responsibility of caring for her siblings while dealing with the expectations of her strict parents. Her sense of comfort in acting childlike around me is her way of healing her inner child, as she describes it. I have asked her to reduce it when I express that I am not in the mood, and that I would greatly appreciate it if she could be more mindful of my state, so she can sense when to tone it down without testing my patience. She promised she would try, but every few weeks, I become frustrated enough to have to bring it up again. She suggested that I inform her immediately when I believe she is acting childish, because she claims she cannot recognize when she is being childish, but I have not really been able to do this often because 1. She is always cheerful when she behaves this way, 2. It only bothers me enough for me to really notice when I am in a bad mood, and 3. I fear it will strain our relationship. It has not reached a point where I am willing to end things over this, but I do struggle to feel both physically and romantically drawn to her when she behaves like this. She is trying her best to be open to my feelings, but I am uncertain about how to navigate this since it appears to be a fundamental aspect of who she is. I cannot envision myself tolerating it in a couple of years when we face societal challenges such as finding jobs, securing a home, or raising a family. Can anyone relate to her perspective and offer their thoughts? Any advice or comments would be appreciated. Story 5. I, 24F, messed up big in the beginning. Now it's been 5 years, and he, 27M, thinks everything is my fault still. I, 24, female, and my partner, 27, male, have been in a serious relationship for over 5 years. Our relationship began as friends, and I wanted to become intimate with him because I was attracted to him. I was a troubled teenager in high school, while he had married young and was going through a divorce. At that time, I was afraid of relationships because I clung to them so tightly due to neglect and abuse from my parents, and each time it ended in some form of betrayal of trust. I didn't trust my judgment of character and started to believe that purely sexual relationships were the only way I could receive love without being hurt. Additionally, as a teenager, I struggled with leading men on, not comprehending why they developed feelings for me or why they felt hurt when I did not reciprocate those feelings. I believe this was an unhealthy way I learned to connect with others, and I genuinely thought they liked me as a friend. I would often feel disappointed when I realized they were not interested if they were not getting a relationship from me, as I felt my value was only evident if I were considered their property. When I met my partner, I still held this unhealthy mindset and did not realize it until much later. We began to engage in sexual activity, and I told him that was all I wanted from him, and that after everything we had both experienced in previous relationships, I wasn't ready for a committed one. I informed him that I was sexually exclusive with him, meaning I would not engage in sexual activity with anyone else for the entirety of our relationship. I was certainly wrong in that regard because, although I didn't physically engage with anyone else, there was one man I had been sexting on and off between relationships over 3 years. I had sexual intercourse with him once, but I had many chances to be intimate with him and chose not to, as I did not particularly trust him. He served as a crutch, and we had mutually agreed that a romantic relationship was out of the question long before this. He provided a reliable source of validation and sexual excitement when no one else did, but that was all. Moreover, I also had male friends with whom I was slightly flirtatious, but rarely spent time messaging or hanging out. I had no intention of pursuing any sexual relationship with those individuals, but enjoyed their attention nonetheless. I continued to message my crutch intermittently for the following 3 months, but during this time, I began to gain trust in my current partner and saw real potential for a relationship. I cut off communication with the crutch, but continued to talk to my male friends sporadically. My partner expressed dissatisfaction with this, so I completely stopped talking to all male friends within the first 2 months of deciding to pursue a relationship. At that time, he had a few female friends, and he later admitted that he was interested in one of them, who essentially offered herself to him. This raised a red flag for me, along with other concerns that made me hesitant to fully invest in the relationship. I lied to him about the crutch. I deleted my previous messages with him and claimed that I wasn't in contact with him at all. I was in denial about my flirtatious behavior outside of our relationship and lied to him about that as well. I did not want him to know because I felt guilty about refusing him a relationship for so long due to my lack of trust. I recognized that this was a very undesirable trait, and I was fearful of losing him just as I began to realize that he might be good for me. It was incredibly selfish of me, and I do not justify that at all. He had good reason to be suspicious. Eventually, we moved past this issue since things were going well for us. We ended up relocating out of state to be near his family, and shortly after the move, he looked through my phone and discovered some messages from the time when my sexual relationship was happening, which was understandably very upsetting. I made the worst decision possible and continued to lie about it afterward. I was terrified of him knowing who I truly was at that time because I did not fully comprehend it then, and I feared he would hate me. After much discussion, debate, and argument, I eventually confessed everything to him and wrote several letters explaining my previous relationships leading up to and during our sexual relationship. By the time I confessed, I had lied and withheld so much that he never believed I shared everything. I absolutely do not blame him for that because I handled the situation very immaturely and untrustworthily. He wanted to stay with me and work through it, which I am grateful for, but it feels as though the accusations and his refusal to accept my explanations never cease. It feels like he will ask me how I feel about something, but unless my response aligns with what he already believes, he becomes very upset, labeling me a liar or refusing to listen. Additionally, he has developed a drinking problem and a strong attraction to a coworker recently, blaming me for everything. He can be quite rude and dismissive when I try to discuss my needs in the relationship. It makes me genuinely sad because I know I caused this, but I have changed. I thought it would improve over time, and in some ways, it has. I have also needed to enhance my communication skills over time, which I know has played a role in this. He is the first person who has ever encouraged me to express myself, and it has been a learning journey. Sometimes, I wish he would have left me for that reason, as I hate that it continues to create major friction between us 5 years later. I love him more than I have ever loved anyone, and aside from that, we are highly compatible. Has anyone experienced anything similar, and if so, what were your successes and failures? Did it ultimately work out? Story 6. My child's dad is laid off again, and I still keep our child 5 days a week and go to school. I have nowhere else to turn for answers or info. So, I dislike having to write this out right now, but I can't keep it in any longer, and no one seems to understand or offer any suggestions. My son's father and I co-parent without a custody agreement. For a while, it has only been me caring for our son Monday through Friday afternoon. Please keep in mind that the major issue I have always faced with him is communication. So until I can find a solution, I have to manage this on a weekly basis until I can sort something out. Essentially, he has been laid off for the third time from a different company, and in the previous instances, at least the first job, it was clear he could have remained employed there, but I'll never know the complete story. This time, however, his unemployment benefits are significantly less than he anticipated, only a couple of $100s a week, so I now only receive $200 a month in child support. Even the original amount was reduced after I did not sign a piece of paperwork to contest it. But that arrangement worked fine before. I understood that it was what was best for my son, especially since I was unable to work at the time and could focus solely on being with my child, which I wouldn't trade for anything. Now I am in school and managing a lot, including family life at home, financial difficulties, and barely finding any needed time for myself. There's a lot on my plate, and I don't want to digress too much, but we had a disagreement one day when I was feeling frustrated, and he mentioned doing me favors when I asked him to take our son for a day or two during the week, even though I offered to provide food and even suggested adjusting child support since I know he is paying for the 5 days our son is with him. But nothing constructive ever results from those conversations. Ideally, I would like to maintain having our son on a weekend day so that I can spend time with him while he is not in school and exchange it for a weekday. I also have appointments and other obligations that arise, so I need to coordinate around those or plan to have him on that specific day. Additionally, I frequently have my son calling me as soon as I wake up on my first morning of the weekend or on Sunday mornings, crying and asking me to come pick him up, sometimes waking me up myself depending on the time, because his dad tends to sleep until around noon after typically staying up playing video games and drinking with friends, despite my previous attempts to discuss establishing a better schedule. As it's unfair to my son and to me. Even if I didn't have him, I would feel guilty and anxious, so this is definitely not how I want to start my Monday mornings at school. Naturally, I usually do go and pick him up, or his dad will drop him off, leaving me with no time for myself. At this point, I have begun telling him that we would need to exchange that weekend day for a weekday, but he still has not specified a day that works well for him to temporarily adhere to that arrangement. Consequently, I will have to decide and ask him specifically if that works for him, because sometimes it feels like I am talking to a wall after raising these concerns multiple times with no resolution. Clearly, after finally getting an agreement and an apology, that has not been beneficial. He discusses having trouble sleeping or suffering from sleep issues, but there's no point in delving into all the details about that. I have tried recommending that he see someone who could provide temporary assistance for his sleep problems, but he refuses to take anything and is apprehensive about all medication, including ibuprofen, while he continues to drink beer as though there is no tomorrow. I understand he is facing many challenges, and I attempt to sympathize with him and assist in any way I can, but you cannot help someone who does not wish to be helped. I am unsure how to handle these specific situations and have considered seeking out a family lawyer to discuss everything if I can afford it or find affordable or free options. I have barely been able to cover essential expenses such as clothing for my son, bills, gas, etc. I have also attempted to encourage him to apply for Medicaid or see if he qualifies for food assistance and other support, but he has never made that effort. I am mentally and physically drained, mostly mentally. I realize every situation is unique, and I may not be articulating this all effectively, but I am so overwhelmed that I can hardly think about it. I definitely harbor some resentment towards him. Please bear with me as I express this. I am tired and struggling to think clearly, but I needed to get this off my chest in case anyone has had similar experiences or arrangements and can offer advice on options, even regarding child support. Thank you for taking the time, and please be kind in your responses. I am not perfect and have never claimed to be, but I am at my breaking point here.